All right. Well, today is a Sunday that we've been waiting for quite some time. Happy Coptic New Year. Kula Sena Wintum Tayyibin. Today we celebrate the first Sunday of the Coptic year. And of course, it's an exciting day, and a day the church tells us to celebrate, and a day that I personally have been looking forward to, and I hope you have as well. If you've been following like the end of the Coptic year, the past several weeks, the message that the church had been giving us in the readings over and over was, that's the nicest way of saying it. It was about the end of the world. And of course, as much as we look forward to being with God in heaven, and as much as we look forward to that everlasting union, which is going to be a great celebration, usually when we hear about the end, we think a lot of the negatives. And then we hear the things about like the servant, and he tells him, get away from me, and I don't know you, and depart from me, and all this kind of stuff. So the past couple weeks has been a lot of, get ready because doom is coming, and get ready because. And I mean a lot of that stuff. And then today the church tells us, celebrate. And the phrase that the church uses over and over that repeats during this season. So we've celebrated the Feast of Nowruz on Friday, and then for 2 weeks, the church continues in its joyful period. Just like after Easter we have 50 days of joy, after Nowruz we have 2 weeks of joy. And during those 2 weeks of joy, the phrase that's repeated over and over and over and over, which was taken from the psalm that we read just now, is the phrase at the bottom there. What we keep saying is, bless the crown of the year with your goodness, O Lord. Bless the crown of the year with your goodness, O Lord. That's what you hear in the Coptic as Mopi Klom and Titi, that part. Bless the crown of the year with your goodness, O Lord. And that's what's repeated over and over. And that's coming from the psalm that was read to us just now before the gospel, Psalm 31, verse 19. Oh, how great is your goodness, which you have laid out for those who fear you. So here's the message the church is trying to give us. Ready for a good message? This is a good message day. Today, the message the church is trying to give us is that, yes, the end could be right around the corner. And yes, we have to be prepared. And yes, we have to do our part. And yes, we have to be faithful and wise stewards. And yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. But never, ever, 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 ever lose sight that God's goodness is what's really going to carry us home. Not my doings, but God's goodness. And there's a tendency that we have sometimes to focus very much on what I'm doing and not enough on God's goodness. Let me show you this in a visual example. I'll show you this very easy. I'll show you a picture up on the screen that teaches this lesson in 2 seconds and you understand it very good. And this picture I'm about to show you is my favorite picture in the whole wide world. And it's a picture to show you how much I love this picture. Is this picture, on my computer, I used to have a picture of my kids. And I replaced the kids, don't tell them, I replaced the kids with this picture I'm about to show you. Don't tell them. I'm saying this in this liturgy because they're not here. The next liturgy I'm going to say something completely different. I'm just telling you guys secret. This picture is my favorite picture in the whole wide world. You see this picture? See, you can't see it as good maybe from there. I got this picture on my phone. I got it on my computer. This picture is not a picture I pulled off the internet. This is a picture I took by myself with my own hand. And maybe a few months back, I was at a convention in Calgary, in Canada. And that's up. Calgary is like on the left side of Canada, like by the Rocky Mountains. So the resort that we stayed at was like a 5-star, like 10-star kind of a place. Like it was the nicest place. It wasn't even a resort. It was called a chateau. It wasn't a resort. It was a chateau. And this place was like a castle. Like everything inside the place was like 5 stars. Like I remember one time I stayed in the Ritz-Carlton in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh. This was better than that place. This was better. And then I woke up in the morning. I got there late on a Friday night, and the place was beautiful. And I woke up in the morning early, and I walked outside, and I saw that the chateau thing is right underneath this huge mountain on top of this lake. And I just started, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe how beautiful the scene was. Later on that day, when we had some free time, I said I wanted to climb the mountain. Of course, they told me it would take days to climb to the top, but I said, let's go as far as we can. So we went as far as we could, and I took this picture. You know why I love this picture? You know why I love this picture? The chateau, the hotel, the white thing, was huge. It was gigantic. It was like maybe 15 stories or something like that. I don't know how many underground, and I don't know how wide the thing was. It was huge. But when you look at this picture, on first glance, what sticks out at you? The hotel? The mountain? Like, the hotel is nice, but when you put it in comparison to the mountain, you can barely see it. It's tiny. Now the thing is, our life oftentimes, as we're living on this earth, is a lot of times, is exactly like taking this picture, and our life is like the little hotel, and God's goodness is like the big mountain. And sometimes we get so focused on the little hotel because as we're down living in the hotel, and like I said on that Friday night, wow, look at all these buttons in my room that I can push, and wow, look at all these different shops, and wow, look how 15th floor and 16th floor. And then you get some perspective on things, and you realize, hey, if the window's broken on the 7th floor, can you see it? Does it matter? From right here, from this perspective, does it matter that the window's broken? Can you see it? How about if there's a stain in the carpet in one of the rooms? Can you see it? What if the air conditioner's not working in one of the rooms? Can you see it? When you're standing right in front of the air conditioner or in front of the stain, it seems like a big deal. It seems like a big deal. It seems like a big deal. But when you take a step back, you realize, I'm worried that in life, a lot of us would look at this picture and spend 90% of our time focusing on the little white house and just 5-10% focusing on the mountain. You're missing the picture. If you're focusing the whole time in the picture on the little white house and you're not seeing the mountain, you're missing it. Yeah, look at the house and it's nice, but give it its proper due and then look at the rest. Life is the same way. Is that yes, we have to do our part, and yes, we have to be faithful, and yes, and yes, and yes, and I'm not denying any of that stuff. Everything is true, and God will judge us according to our deeds. Absolutely, everything is true. But never, ever, ever lose sight of the fact that God's goodness is so much bigger than you can possibly imagine. When I was sitting there in front of this mountain and just looked up, and just could see the huge mountain. I remember to myself, there's a verse in Psalm 36, okay, it talks about God's love is like a mountain. It's either God's love or God's mercy, can't remember. God's goodness, let's say, okay? God is like a mountain. And I remember that verse. I was sitting up there looking and saying, I spend so much of my time focusing on the 10%. Church saying for 2 weeks, look at the mountain. Look at the mountain. And that's the beauty of the new year. There's a beauty that we as Coptic people are the luckiest people in the world. We get to celebrate New Year twice. And we get to make 2 New Years in the same year. And every time we celebrate a new year, it's a new start. And it's a new start, a new thing that we can focus on. And no matter what happened in last year, and no matter what happened in my sins, and no matter what happened in my house, is that God gives us a new start. And one of the things that I think is kind of nice, because I think God teaches us lessons from every aspect. You may not care, but it's nice that it came on this Sunday, September 13th, 2009, because it's also a Sunday we've been waiting for about 6 months, as it is the start of football. Redskins play today at 4:15 p.m. in New York, the Meadowlands. So this is the day that we've been waiting for so long. And the best thing, again, God teaches us lessons here. That no matter what happened last season, is that everyone starts off now, hey, we get another chance. And let's go. And everyone is a Super Bowl contender today. Today, before any of the games have begun, everyone has a chance to win the Super Bowl. Because nothing's happened. And I feel like that's the start God gives us to every Coptic New Year as well. Is that, yeah, you may have made mistakes. And yeah, you may have been bad. And yeah, you may have fallen short. And yeah. But never forget God's goodness. And we pray this year for His goodness. And we're praying this year to remind ourselves of His goodness more than we remind ourselves of our shortcoming. Again, show you how God teaches lessons in little ways. 3 days ago, I was reading with my son the Bible. And we're reading through Genesis. Reading the Tower of Babel. Okay, you know the Tower of Babel where the people tried to build a tower so high it could reach God. Okay, my son is very wise for his age. Okay, very wise. He said, why did the people do that? Why did the people do that? Why did the people try to build a tower so high it could reach God? So I said, they're trying to be like God. He didn't get it. And to be honest, the more I thought about it, I don't get it either. What were they thinking? God was with them. God was taking care of them. God was doing everything for them. And they all of a sudden decided, no, we're going to build a tower so high that we can reach God. Hey, I got news for you. The Tower of Babel isn't just in Genesis, it's today as well. Because many of us do the same thing. We try to build, say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put together a collection of Legos that's going to be so high that God has to accept me. Look, I'm going to do all this good stuff, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to build a tower so high. What does God do when he sees someone trying to build a tower to reach him? He knock it over. He knock it over. And then we, if we're not smart, we'll just pick up the pieces and try to build again and build again and build, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to build again. God just knock it over. Why? That's why. Look at the mountain. No matter how big you build this hotel, it is never going to reach the top of the mountain. No matter. Ever. Ever. And you're a fool if you go through life. You're a fool if you look at this picture and you say, oh, look at that building. Ah, it's a nice building. You're a fool. You missed it. And you're a fool if you go through life so focused on yourself and your own efforts, whether they be very good or be very bad. If this hotel is 10 stories or if it's 3 stories, you couldn't tell the difference right now in light of that mountain. If this hotel had the nicest chandeliers or the worst chandeliers, you couldn't tell right now in light of that mountain. And it's the same thing in life. If your acts be great, if your acts be good, none of them, okay, either plus or minus side, can overshadow and should take your view away from the goodness of God which He shines upon us. As we celebrate the new year, one of the things that we say in the hymns is we talk about bless the seeds and bless the winds and bless the rivers and blessing nature. Okay, talking about like the farming season. Okay, it's talking about like, bless the crops and all that kind of stuff and bring forth harvest, etc., etc., etc. We're reminded of a very, very, very important principle. And reminded of this thing in a very easy way, which is no matter what happened last harvest time, as now we have a chance, new harvest. Why? Because God, as He says in the Sermon on the Mount, makes His sun to rise on the righteous and the wicked. And He makes it rain on those good and those bad. And God's mercy and God's grace and God's goodness and the mountain of God, no matter what you did yesterday, just like the sun every morning, the sun doesn't decide whether to rise or not rise. The sun doesn't say, no, you were bad yesterday, I'm not going to rise. The sun every day wakes up and rises. And the same way the sun comes up every morning, God's goodness comes up every morning. And God's mercy and His love and His grace and His kindness comes up every single morning. And it shines down upon us. And that's what we celebrate these days. And that's why we're rejoicing. And that's why we're hopeful. And that's why we're singing and celebrating this day. So today's the day to celebrate. This is a season to look and focus on that mountain and see God's goodness. Glory be to God forever. Amen.